Good evening. My name is J.D. Haughton, and I'm back with another episode of the Sask Sports Show on Amateur Sports TV, brought to you by Southwest Terminal. I know I've been doing a lot of hockey these last few weeks, and this is a sports show about Saskatchewan. So this week, I'm stepping up to the plate, and I will be speaking with the president of Softball Saskatchewan, Gary McDonald. I will be catching up with Gary to see how the league has handled this pandemic. Talk more about softball in the province of Saskatchewan, and we're going to talk about their plans for this season, if they can actually get going, and their plans for the future, and how people can actually get into the game of softball, and who they can talk to, and how they get into it. So, and much more on this episode of the Sask Sports Show. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And without further ado, the guest of honor here, Gary McDonald. Gary, thanks for being on the show tonight.
Well, thanks for having me, JD.
No worries. How you doing?
Looking forward. Good. Doing good.
Yeah,
good.
You guys.
I'd like a big Softball Saskatchewan banner behind me, but I just don't have one in my house here right now.
Well, maybe the next time you get on the show, we'll you can put a big banner behind it.
Okay.
So, kind of just before we get started, kind of wanted to get to know you a little bit as the president. Kind of what are your roles and responsibility as president of this league?
Well, basically, my primary role is towards the betterment of a balanced and unified approach to improving the game of softball in Saskatchewan. We have a board of directors in Saskatchewan, Softball Saskatchewan. It's made up of 8 individuals. 1 per district, and those boundaries are set by Sask Sport. So there's 8 directors all over the province, and myself as president makes 9. We do have an office in Regina where we employ 3 full-time people. I have an executive director, a program coordinator, and an administrative assistant to do a fantastic job for us. And we work together. Other roles I have is I have several committees set up in Softball Saskatchewan, and from Sport for All to High Performance to Future Funding to Competitions Committee, Umpire Development Committee, and I select individuals to chair all those meetings, and I also am involved with selecting individuals off the board to sit on those committees that have a lot of knowledge in those areas and are very passionate towards that area. So I'm an ex officio of all those committees as president. I don't attend every meeting they have, but I try to make my way around and get onto every one of them as much as I can. Certainly the chairperson's always a board member, and that person will come back to our board meetings and give a report to everybody of what they've got going, where they're at, and what they need from Softball Saskatchewan and so forth. Also, I represent Softball Saskatchewan at the Softball Canada annual general meetings and the Western Canada annual general meetings. The Softball Canada annual general meeting is once a year, usually in November. This past one, of course, it was canceled due to the pandemic, and it was a virtual meeting. It was quite a bit different. It just took away from what we actually accomplish at those meetings. Those are very fun and interesting and very informative. Every province and territory takes a turn in hosting that event. So we're going all over the place. Western Canada AGM is also in January every year. I'm actually currently the president of that association as well, and we just held our annual general meeting virtually last night. Also, I oversee the executive director in the office. We're like partners, actually. I don't think there's a day go by that we don't talk and get caught up with each other of what's happening and where we need to go next. I represent the association at various Canadian and Western Canadian championships throughout the province when we have them. And yeah, there's probably more, but I'll stop at that.
Well, like you said, going to those meetings and like those AGMs, kind of, doing them virtually, like you said, takes away from the fun of it. It is to go wherever they are each year and talk to everybody, because obviously all you guys have the same goal and same passion for softball.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, actually, you'd think with this pandemic we'd hardly be doing anything, but I can tell you prior to the pandemic we'd have like 5 board members, 5 board meetings a year, couple AGMs. I'll bet in this past year I've had 25 to 30 virtual meetings, because let's take this opportunity now to explore what we can do better, and various meetings all the time.
Well, and it's a time to grow as an association as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what kind of, like, your history with softball, what made you want to get into the game of softball?
I guess a few decades ago, JD, about your age or less, I used to play. I used to play, and after I got married and had a couple of kids, they grew up and showed an interest in it. So I gave up playing, and you know what it's like. Does anybody want to coach? And not a whole lot of hands go up, so mine did, and got involved coaching my son. I coached him for about 8 years, and then he was finished after the bantam, and then my daughter, I coached her for a few years. So I took a real interest in coaching. I took various coaching seminars and classes, and obtained my level 3 coaching certification. At that time, I was living in Eastview, and I took on the role as the Eastview ball coordinator and looked after all the ball in Eastview. I then went to a lot of meetings with Saskatoon Minor at the time, and eventually I got on the board as a director there for a couple years, and then I took on the presidency of Saskatoon Minor for 10 years. After that, I was very much involved with Softball Saskatchewan, attending their meetings, so I was elected as a director for a couple years there, and I've been president now of Softball Saskatchewan for 16 years.
Holy jeez.
It's been great. It's been great.
Well, definitely seems like it's been a family sport, and obviously, I know you have a full-time job as well, and then you have another full-time job. How, let's say, how demanding is being president of this league? Answering phone calls, emails, like you said, a lot of virtual meetings that you've been taking on during this pandemic. Like, is it a 24-hour job?
I'm not going to say it's a 24-hour job, but it's an everyday job. Like I said, I'm very fortunate with our executive director in Softball Saskatchewan. We talk every day. I'll call him on my break, or we'll chat in the evening. He handles the majority of our calls with any concerns or what's happening, and then obviously he relays that to me. We have a chat, and we'll get back to those people on whatever issues that's going on or what we have coming up for them. So pretty much every day is we're chatting for sure, and a lot of evening meetings, weekend meetings as well. And I'm always able to kind of schedule them where I'm available, and works out for everybody.
Well, it seems like you're a busy man there, Gary.
That's the way you got to be, especially nowadays, right?
Yeah, there's only so many Zoom meetings that you can have with, wearing half of an outfit.
Yeah. But you know what? This whole Zoom thing, though, JD, it's given us another creative idea. It's nice to meet face to face, but the one issue we always had was a lot of coaches, when it comes to provincials, would like to have a meeting prior to the competition, so everybody's on the same page. They know what to do, what's all involved. So I really believe that we're going to use this Zoom now going forward to, like, we could have a coaches meeting on a Wednesday night, doesn't matter where they're from in the province, and everybody will know exactly where to go, who to report to, and what they got to look forward to, and get it done that way.
Which I think it's become easier for people, like you said, when you need to get a group of people from all across the province together and in one place, and everybody, everybody can talk. That's a good thing. So like you said, it's been a blessing and a curse all at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of COVID, the thing that we've been immune to for the last almost about a year now, how has yourself, your like your executive director, your staff that works for softball Saskatchewan, and just the community, the softball community in the province, how has everybody been able to handle this pandemic? Because it's been a very tough one on everybody with sports being canceled, and I know that you guys had a return to play back in last June, and then just like how's everybody doing?
JD, it's been very stressful to say the least, right? Especially at the community level, not knowing whether you can play or can you take your kids out to this field at this time or not. We try to keep everybody informed as much as we can. I also have town hall meetings going on where we contact every association in the province, and we'll split them up into twos, and we'll give them topics. And if we have any information to give, such as the return to play protocols that we can get into later here, we like to tell them face to face, or this way virtually at least, so they know what to expect. But yeah, it was a tough go for everybody, especially last March at the beginning. A lot of uncertainty going on. I put together a return to play committee that we work closely with Sask Sport and the business return team that was through the government that kept sending us information every Friday almost. And so this committee I had set up, we would meet constantly and basically had to write a whole document, was probably 15 pages long, on a return to play protocols for everybody. We had help in it, no question. Softball Canada, our governing body, they also worked on it. So we were able to get a copy from them and kind of put what we needed in there to fit Softball Saskatchewan's needs. And so we would have many meetings, continually updating the package, continually updating all the membership involved and what you could do. The phone was ringing nonstop. How can we do this? Can we do that? And unfortunately, no. We have to follow this. There's no question about it. We have to follow these guidelines. So it's getting better. It's going to get better.
Well, how much, obviously you being the president, you're the one that everybody wants to call to get that information about returning to play. Have you heard anything from Sask Sport or the government about if we're going to have a season this year? How much would you say the communication that you've gotten from not just members of the association, but just people, parents, volunteers, friends, getting text, emails through since the summertime until roughly now?
JD, it's tons of emails, phone calls, and texts, but we try to short-live that by arranging town hall meetings so that we can tell everybody the same story at the same time. Basically, our office in Regina, our executive director, Guy Jacobson, handles all the correspondence with Sask Sport and the business return team. So back then, he was like nonstop. It was every week, and then we meet again at night to rewrite our stuff. And it's slowed down a little bit now, but I think we had to rewrite our return to play 5 times. And so we're there. We'll talk about the season, how it went here a little later, I think. But yeah, just you can't provide enough information to everybody, because we anticipate the questions that they have and we try to answer them before they ask them. And I think we do a really good job on our website. We post everything on there, and again, the town hall meetings that we have in person, and we get a very good response from the associations attending that as well.
Well, and as being a big organization, you guys can only say so much too. You can't exactly tell everybody what's happening behind closed doors that maybe you don't even know yet either. So it might be like, I would think that there's only so much you can say regarding return to play and all that kind of stuff.
Well, actually, not so true. We tell them everything that we know. When we get information from the business return team or Sask Sport, this is what you can do. This is what you cannot do. And we let our membership know 100% of what they can and cannot do. Yes, there's always questions. Well, when do we get to start playing? Are we having provincials this year? A lot of those questions back then we couldn't answer, and I'll get into that here a little bit later about all our championships. But we keep our membership well informed of everything. There's no secrets. Like when we hear something from the provincial government or Sask Sport, we let our membership know as soon as possible.
Well, that's good that you guys are keeping everybody up to date as much as you can. And like those town hall meetings, that's a great idea that maybe a lot of organizations should do. I don't know if they have or not. But speaking of bringing up the fact of your return to play protocol, we're gonna put a button in that right now, and it's everybody's favorite part of the show. It is commercial time here on the Sask Sports Show. So when we come back with Gary McDonald, we're gonna dive right into kind of, as we talked a little bit before about the return to play protocol, kind of what goes into that, all the time and effort, rewriting their protocols and whatnot, and talking about their COVID response team as well. So just stay tuned. We'll be right back. Okay, and welcome back to the Sask Sports Show on Amateur Sports TV. I am here with my guest, Gary McDonald. He's the president of Softball Saskatchewan. Before the break, we kind of touched a little bit about COVID and their return to play protocols that they had to submit to, and they had their COVID response team as well. So we're going to kind of dive into that in this next part of the show, talking about, Gary, what went into, having to come up with these return to play protocols, having to revise them, like you said, 5 times, the time and effort that it put into it. How often did that sort of thing change that you had to revise it and whatnot? Just kind of explained the process.
Well, we had to revise it almost weekly at the beginning. When this first came out, we got a lot of information from Sask Sport and through the provincial government of these are the restrictions. And they were very tight restrictions, right? I think I said before, Softball Canada was also working on a return to play document as well. So we were able to get a copy of theirs. We had to change a lot to fit Softball Saskatchewan's needs, but it entailed a lot of detail in there. And we broke it up into, I guess because of our sport, called it innings, and like inning 1, you could get out there and throw the ball around. And inning 2, you could have type of controlled scrimmages. It was basically all practicing at the beginning. It wasn't till the beginning of July when we were actually able to have some pod games just with local teams only. There was no travel allowed. So you'd have 3 or 4 teams in a district playing each other. That was it. That was all that was allowed. And we were able to go through that. We were always hopeful that we could have a provincial championship. And we kept postponing that and said, well, you guys want this, we're going to do it for you. And normally all our provincials are in the month of July. We moved it up till August and September, and the associations, the teams were happy about that. Said, okay, let's do it. Let's have it. And unfortunately, as time went on, that ended up getting canceled as well. So first of all, it was The Canadian Championships, it took a long time, but they finally had to pull the pin on all the Canadian Championships. Absolutely no travel from province to province. And then the Western Canadian Championships, we had to pull the pin on that as well, because you can't travel to Alberta, BC, Manitoba. So that was done. So we were very hopeful that we could do a provincial championship. But the restrictions that kept coming just made it impossible for us to have that. So everybody just kind of played out their league play and did the best they could with that. So we learned a lot from last year. I'm not going to say what's going to happen this year, because honestly, I don't know. I'm hopeful. I'm always going to stay hopeful. We do have plans in place. Provincial championships, per se, all our provincial championship hosts are in place right now to host, and we do anywhere from around 35 provincial championships in Saskatchewan. In the event that things don't get better, we've came up with Plan B, and that's to hold pod championships, meaning I'll take an age group, say U16 girls. Maybe there's 16 teams in the province. One weekend we would have 4-4-4-4 in one location, with the top 2 teams coming out. The second weekend, again, the top 2 teams coming out. It would take 3 weekends to finally get a provincial championship. But if that's what we have to do, that's what we're prepared to do in all divisions. So things are a little bit quiet right now. Unfortunately, we are not able to do a number of things that we would like to do over the winter, like skills clinics and stuff. We're only allowed 8 in a facility, with definite, restrictions on that. We are planning in the very near future to start up our coaching clinics, because we can maintain eight coaches in one classroom setting and do that. It's going to be a while for the skills clinics though, because the travel, right? But I do know there's a lot of organizations throughout the province, a lot of club teams that are already having their own clinics in their gyms, when they just have eight of their own kids locally and doing that. So that's the best they can do. Back in March, we had to have health officers on every team. Writing down who's at the park. It was basically you had to drop off and leave, and we had to copy down everybody that was there in case of any issues that came up. But everybody got through it. It was a struggle at first. Umpires were behind the plate at the games. A lot of people didn't like that at the beginning, but that's the best you could do, because they weren't allowed to go in. And there were games played, and that was good to see. I think it definitely hurt. It's like softball Saskatchewan. We usually have around I'm going to say 16,000 plus members. I'll go back to 2019, where we had over 16,000 members. This past year, we had not quite 5,000. So we lost 70% of our membership due to COVID, that just didn't want to take the chance, or it was hard to get started, right? So we're definitely hoping for a better 21 here, and get them all back playing. And it's looking promising. I think we can. We've got a number of initiatives going on, going forward here in softball Saskatchewan, that's going to help them out.
Well, and kind of back to what you're talking about your clinics and whatnot, kind of go back to March, when basically the whole world shut down because of this virus. At that point in time in March, what was going on that had to be immediately shut down? I would imagine that in the winter time is kind of where you guys have those indoor clinics and your skills clinics and coaching clinics and whatnot. I don't know if you remember, but I guess at that moment, where were you and what was going on that had to be immediately canceled?
We were on top of that as far as Softball Saskatchewan is concerned, because we knew that we could not get instructors out there. We could not hold clinics of abundance of kids. So even though that there was a lot registered, we had to refund them and explain why, and it was all shut down. Like I said, there were still some local associations, rural and urban Saskatchewan, that still held little mini clinics amongst their own teams to keep going. But Softball Saskatchewan had to take a back seat and move away from that, because we weren't allowed to bring in instructors and have 20, 30 kids at a time in any facility.
And that's hard. Yeah. You know, especially gearing up for another season, and then this happens.
Yeah.
And then originally it was just going to be for a little while, and now we're almost into a year. And as you've seen with winter sports, how they're being canceled. You know, Saskatchewan Hockey just made an announcement that they're not even going to play any games possibly until the end of March, which is terrible. I like your pod idea, because that's kind of what they did too. They had the North, like they had divisions, so the North would only play the North, South would play the South.
Right.
Is it kind of going to be the same thing per district? You're going to have, like, for league play, I'm talking, would you have that same sort of setup for league play, or are the leagues in each district small enough where there's not more than 8 teams?
Yeah, like for last year or coming up this year?
Coming up this year, if we do get the ball rolling and we do play.
Well, the leagues, we're hoping that they can play. They're all kind of tight together. There should be no problem with that, as long as we get the approval, of course, for that. It's the travel for like so many tournaments. I'll go back to that. That's the big thing. League play is one thing where you can stay in your district, stay in your own community, stay in the city of Saskatoon and have your games, or Regina. But tournaments was a major thing in softball for all the kids and the adults. So every tournament was canceled last year. Like you couldn't go anywhere to play in a tournament, whether it's out of province or in province. They were done. That was devastating for everybody. So you were left just with your league play. Again, it's way too early now to know what's going to happen once we get into the actual ball season in May and June, when all the tournaments are held and the league play starts at the beginning of May. Obviously, we're going to stay on top of it. That our executive director meets with Sask Sport every week. Every week there's conference calls, and all sports are on it, so we all kind of know what's going on and what's affecting each one of us. So all I can say is our board of directors and our committees are going to be well prepared for whatever comes down the pipe, for us to rewrite our protocols again if we have to, and make sure we communicate it to all our membership so everybody's well aware.
And before we take another commercial break, my last question for you. In your opinion, this whole pandemic shutting everything down, what is the biggest thing, or the biggest, who and what has this hurt the most with the canceling of the sport of softball in the province?
Well, the kids, especially in the rural areas. I shouldn't say just the rural areas. It's all areas. It's the kids. We lost so many because of this at the beginning, and the nervousness about the whole pandemic and what we could do or not do. It was devastating and for everybody. And I said, I told you the numbers, like we lost 70% of the membership this past year because of it. It just, and we have plans in place, and I hope we're going to get there. I really do. And be happy to share what initiatives we got going here after the break.
Sounds good. Thanks, Gary. And again, it's everybody's favorite time of the Sask Sports Show, commercial time. Time to take a little break. But when we come back, like Gary said, we're going to talk about, we've talked about COVID too much. We talked about it for almost a year. We don't need to talk about it anymore. We're going to talk about the plan of Softball Saskatchewan and, like Gary said, the initiatives of the association as well, which I'm really excited to hear about. So we'll be back in just a few minutes. Okay, we are back here on the Sask Sports Show, brought to you by Amateur Sports TV. My lovely guest, Gary McDonald here, the president of Softball Saskatchewan. And before the break, he kind of touched on the initiatives and the plans that the association has for the future, and also for this season as well. So right off the top, Gary, let's dive right into those initiatives. Kind of what things can we expect from Softball Saskatchewan moving forward?
Well, this whole pandemic, although it was very bad, it did create some opportunities for us to sit down and put our heads together and think of what can we do better in the sport of softball in the province of Saskatchewan. And so I put together another committee. I called it the Future Funding Committee that we established in last fall. And some of the initiatives that we are doing, they're in place now. To help out is we've lowered the cost to enter provincial championships by half for all the teams. We've lowered the registration fee to attend coaching clinics for all the coaches, half price. We are implementing a new coaching app that our committee has developed for coaches in our Timbits program and the U10 program. It's an amazing app where they can have it on their phone. They can have their own lesson plan right on the field. They don't have to hold a clipboard, look at the paper. It's going to show them how to do a drill, why you're doing it. It's a step-by-step. So we're really looking forward to that this year coming into play, and it will. Also, we've been working on this for several years, but never really got close to it. But this year we said, we're going to do this. And so we're hiring a part-time Indigenous sport coordinator for Softball Saskatchewan. Like, we know the northern communities in Saskatchewan. There's a ton of people out there that I think would love the opportunity to be organized and play the game of softball. You just have to find the right person to get out there and initiate it with them. So we're currently have advertised for that position, and we hope to have it in play in a month or two. Somebody in play that we can get out to all these different places and explain our programs and help them get started. Also, we are in the midst of hiring a professional marketing consultant. We've had 4 or 5 people contact us that they're showing interest, and we've asked them basically, what can you do for us? And we're waiting to get all the responses from them. And we plan on spending a lot of money to market our game in this province of softball a lot. So looking forward to that as well. That's some of the highlights.
So with this Indigenous coordinator, once you do hire one, would you go up to those northern communities, put on clinics to get that interest of maybe young kids, adults, people of all ages, just to try to get them into the game?
Absolutely. That's what our plan is. First, we have to have the right person that can connect with all of them and get in there and explain our programs. We will back them 110%. And once we get them established, if they're interested in being established, we will provide instructors to go out and run clinics, skills clinics, coaches clinics, help them through the whole process of being affiliated with Softball Saskatchewan and leading the way for them. So
and also, like we kind of talked earlier about the districts, and you bring in this trying to get more of the with the Indigenous coordinator. and whatnot, and putting on clinics. Where does the end of the districts in the northern part of Saskatchewan? Would Saskatoon be the north, like the farthest north that it goes?
No, we go all the way up to La Ronge. That's basically District 9, which we currently do not have a director there. There's been no activity in that area at all. But Meadow Lake, is District 7 out there, all around there. Yeah, we said 8 districts from the south to the north, and I can't even remember all the towns and villages there. It's in our handbook, really, but yeah, the associations. I'll get back to you here in a minute how many we have in the entire province, but I'll get to that for you.
Oh, no worries. It sounds like you guys have some cool things brewing for the like you said, you're trying to market your brand of Softball Saskatchewan,
right?
Get more hire that Indigenous coordinator to get some more people from those northern communities. You have that coaching app, which seems really cool.
Oh, it's going to be, yeah, Athlete Era it's called, and yeah.
Okay, well, what kind of move on with we talked about the initiatives and whatnot that Softball Saskatchewan is planning for the future.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody of any age wants to get into the game of softball, kind of where do they have to go? Who do they have to talk to? How do they go about doing that?
That is handled by all the local associations throughout the province, and they're listed in our handbook as well as on our website. A lot of them do advertising through whatever means they do in their communities, through the schools or letters or pamphlets or whatever. But also they can call our Softball Saskatchewan office in Regina at any time, and we will direct them to the right person or persons to contact to register. There's also the district directors that are in the know in all 8 districts that they can call them. They're listed on our website as well, and they can direct them to the right people. It's all handled locally.
Okay. Well, that because I know that growing up in BC, I know softball,
Mm-hmm.
slow pitch, that whole kind of game out there. It's very popular, and I've noticed that in Saskatchewan as well.
Yeah.
Just kind of off the top of your head, how much do you think the game of softball is growing in Saskatchewan? Let's say in the last 10 years, 5 to 10 years.
We've bounced around between 15,000 and 18,000 membership over the last, say, 3 to 5 years. We've had a slight increase over the last 3, minus this past year, of course, but a slight increase over the past 3 years prior to 2020. So it's going good. The girls' ball it's thriving pretty good, as it always has. Canada-wide, boys' ball is starting to drop somewhat. We continue to push and promote the boys' softball. And this past year, unfortunately, it didn't happen, but it's never happened before. But we put together in our Western Canada program that we were going to have the first U12 boys Western Canadian Championship ever, and it was going to be held here in Saskatoon and in the big fields and all the lights and the announcements, and we had all of Western Canada basically saying that they were sending teams. So we thought that was a great way to promote the boys' ball. If we can get those kids in a facility such as that and their parents to see this kind of thing, we're hoping that that's going to just continue growing at that age group. You got to start at the bottom, right, and move up. So that's another initiative we're trying again this year. It's on the plate that Saskatoon again will host a U12 Boy Western Canadian Championship, and hopefully we can go, and we'll see what happens.
Okay. And on your point of girls kind of a little bit more popular than boys softball, in your opinion, why do you think that is for, girls to be more interested in softball than maybe boys?
Well, there's a few things there. Like hockey would be one of them, right? We lose a lot of the boys through hockey, and in fact, they don't even come to ball until well into the season because they're still playing hockey in a normal year. The opportunity for girls to obtain full scholarships in the States is huge. We've had a number of athletes in Saskatchewan on the female side attend colleges in the States for as long as I've been around, for sure, and getting an education and playing some really good ball there and coming back and supporting their local associations and teams playing here. So more for the girls in that area for sure. But having said that, Saskatchewan being a relatively small province, we have had a tremendous amount of athletes, both male and female, compete in Canada's national teams, going to the Pan American Games, World Championships, Olympic Games. We've had a number of athletes make it that far, as well as coaching staff participated on those teams as well that were selected from Saskatchewan. So that's good.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up the future of some of these, the educational aspects that could come with playing softball for the girls, like you said. Really glad you brought that up because I think after the break, that's what we're going to get into. We're going to be talking also about the different divisions, what age group you kind of guys, the association starts at, how high does it go, what kind of tournaments, provincials, westerns, rotations of the host cities as well, because of the little bit of research that I did. Obviously, nationals, Western Canadian tournaments as well. So all of that when we come back here on the Sask Sports Show with Gary McDonald. Like I said before, it's everybody's favorite time, commercial time, everyone. Let's go. So we'll be right back.
At Super 8 Winnipeg West, we have your comfort in mind with free Wi-Fi and free daily Superstart breakfast. We also have guest laundry facilities, a state-of-the-art fitness center, and a jetted hot tub. Sleep well in a spacious guest room equipped with plush new bedding, a 50-inch flat-screen HD TV, microwave, mini refrigerator, and Keurig coffee maker. Or book a suite with a kitchen, ideal for extended stays. Super 8 Winnipeg West, located just inside the perimeter on Portage Avenue.
And we're back here on the Sask Sports Show on Amateur Sports TV with the president of Softball Saskatchewan, Gary McDonald. Before the break, we just kind of talked about the importance of softball that it has in Saskatchewan. Roughly how many people have joined softball, and also some of the initiatives that they're going to be coming out with here in the near future. So before the break, we kind of discussed too as well the divisions and tournaments. So that's kind of what I want to get in right now. Just kind of in a brief summary, let's talk about the age divisions that the association offers. From when can you start? How high does it go? Kind of tournaments, provincials, westerns, nationals, the rotation of the host cities for those tournaments, and the Canadian championships as well. Sure.
Well, let's start out locally here. As far as the age groups, anywhere from 6 till there's infinite. There's master men's and master women's divisions, okay? So they can continue playing. We've got people playing 55, 60 years old playing, and as young as 6. So as far as the tournaments go, Softball Saskatchewan deals basically with provincials, okay? There's a number of tournaments from the communities I had said earlier that happen all through May, all through June. Provincials are always set in July, basically 4 weekends in July. And said Softball Saskatchewan, we usually host anywhere between 30 and 35 of them all over the provinces. where I'll send out supervisors to each one of them, but the hosts are the ones that they do. We're so fortunate in this province, and I didn't say that earlier, and I need to say it. We have such a great group of volunteers and passionate people in the province of Saskatchewan that love the game of softball, both rural and urban. And we have no trouble finding people to help out and host events. And a lot of times it's the same people year after year after year. But anyway, that's how provincials goes, and that's the age group. So, but there is categories within them. You have what's called A division, B division, and C division, okay? So the A division are more of your elite athletes, and usually a place like Saskatoon and Regina, the bigger centers have 4 or 5 teams because they split up their cities into that category, and they have tryouts, and you'll have A teams and then B teams, and then no C teams in the rural areas, but in urban areas, but in rural there is. So they will go to provincials. At the U12 age group, that's where it ends. There is no Western Canadian Championship. It's provincials and done, except, as I've noted, we are incorporating the U12 Western for the boys, and that's mostly to try and promote the boys' game more. Then we go up to U14, and the same thing, U16, U19, U23, and senior, okay? And they all have categories of the A and the B and the C in provincials. Canadian Championships, they are put on by Softball Canada, and anybody, if you want to host a Canadian Championship, you have to have your bid to host in 2 years prior, okay? And whoever bids, Softball Canada, their people will look at all the bid packages, and they will pick a location that, okay, we're going to award this to you and give you that 2 years to prepare. Saskatchewan does very well in that we have hosted, we do host a minimum of 1 Canadian Championship, at least 1 Western Canadian Championship each year, and a lot of times 2. If everything goes well this year, Saskatoon itself will be hosting the U16 Girls Canadian Championships and the U23 Men and the U12 Boys Western Canadian Championships. Then our other teams will travel. We have restrictions on how many teams we allow to go to a Canadian Championship. It is open due to Softball Canada's rules, but we put a caveat on it that we will not allow more than 3 teams per division to attend a Canadian Championship outside of the province. And we do that so that we can give those teams an opportunity to pick up and bolster their teams a little bit better. If the championship is held in the province of Saskatchewan, then we will allow 4, because there's a host team that automatically gets in, and then the next top 3 after the provincials is over is in. Western Canadian Championships, it's a great championship. It's only in Western Canada. I said from Manitoba to the Yukon and Northwest Territories. And it's more or less for our B competitive teams, okay? The B provincials, the top 2 teams or top 3 teams will go forward and participate in a Western Canadian Championship. I think I've got all that covered.
Well, so, there's, like, obviously you've been to, probably with it being hosted in Saskatchewan, the Western Canadian Championships. Comparing your association to other provinces like Manitoba, BC, Alberta, the Yukon, and the Territories, how would you say that the province of Saskatchewan compares to those other programs?
Personally, I work very closely with every one of those provinces you met. They're all great people, great leaders. They have great programs. Everybody's a little bit different, and it depends on your membership on how gung-ho they are. I can tell you, Saskatchewan, being a small province, at a Canadian Championship for the past, I don't know how many years, we send the 2nd most teams to a Canadian Championship, just behind Ontario. We have teams in every single category that is out there. A lot of other provinces do not. So they're not quite there. I'm not saying they're not doing a good job or as good a job. It's just that's the makeup of their membership, right? And you have to have a strong membership and people willing to do the work and want to participate in these events, especially when you're going, to say Newfoundland for a Canadian championship. It costs a few dollars to do stuff like that, and every year I find, depending on where the Canadian championships are held, will often determine how many teams will actually be going. I'm proud to say in Saskatchewan, that's never really an issue because our teams want to go and they do go.
Well, it's very exciting, especially for, all the teams that do get to go. It's just a cool experience. If you get to travel somewhere else,
Yeah.
like you said, Newfoundland, that would be awesome. For a kid to be able to experience that. Maybe it would want them to try to pursue a higher level of softball.
Mm-hmm.
And,
And
we
the
were talking
opportunity's there.
Yeah. And like we were talking about, in the last break there, the opportunities for girls that play softball for women. I kind of want to touch on that a little bit. For those girls, that what opportunities are out there for them? Do you guys work closely with some colleges in the States? Because I know how big softball, NCAA softball is, especially in Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, all those southern states, Midwest states. It's a very popular sport. What is there after, for these kids?
Well, as you said, there is scholarships and more or less softball Saskatchewan isn't contacted as much as the coaches. I was a coach for 30 plus years and coaching at levels like the U19 midget girls or the scouts from the States are at every one of those Canadian championships. Okay. And they're watching and several times I had scouts from the States representing wherever they were from talk to me about a certain girl and then we'd introduce and they'd get contact information. So they're out there plenty for sure at big events like a Western or especially a Canadian championship, and it goes from there.
And it might not be, let's kind of go over, if a guy or a boy wants to take this up as a full-time sport in Saskatchewan, do they have that ability to play year round in the province, or would they have to go elsewhere, like, into the States to play year round ball?
You would have to go elsewhere, JD. We don't have, as you know, in Saskatchewan, an opportunity to play year round. Certainly we get inside in a normal year and get into the gyms in Saskatoon. I don't know if you've ever gone by the new facility there. It's fantastic. There's like 2 ball fields in one, and the Gordie Howe complex there. And so it's doing very well. But no, you can't play year round here. In the States, a lot of the BC players, they're playing closer to year round because they're cutting across the border as well, although they're not this year. It's a different year, but no, we can't play year round here.
Well, that's still exciting that there's opportunities out there for people that want to pursue, get an education, but also play the sport that they love.
Yes.
Like we're talking about for the girls and whatnot. But talking about an actual season, roughly how long does the season run and how many games, kind of ballpark-ish, excuse my reference. Obviously, we're talking about softball, but about how many games each season does one team play, including all the tournaments, roughly?
Okay, so let's talk, say, the competitive type of teams like the B and the C. They'll basically start their season in March with their tryouts and their camps, indoor camps, until they get outside. The local leagues that they're involved with usually have about a 20-game schedule, but that's just a small piece of what they're doing. besides those 20 league games, they're playing in tournaments every second weekend, getting another 7-8 games in. Going to Western Canadians or Canadians, provincials. When I was coaching at that level, it was nothing for us to have around 65 games in a year.
That's
at that age group.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good for a May and a June and July. Yeah.
That's a
part of August. Yeah.
That's a full schedule right there of just playing ball.
Yes.
You know, I don't know if you've ever made it to Kamloops, because that's where I'm from, but they have a gorgeous facility there that they just built a few years ago. It's called the Tournament Capital Ranch, where they think they have like 7 ball diamonds. And every weekend there's tournaments going on there. Like, it does very well for itself.
Good. Well, I wish they would start hosting some events. I haven't known any big championships there.
You know, and it's owned by the city, so I don't know if they're. I couldn't tell you how that works out, or if they maybe just. The joy is that you can camp there. It's right outside of the city, but it has the ability that you can camp. You can camp there. You don't have to get a hotel room if you don't want to. It's a pretty nice facility, and like you said, that Gordie Howe complex. I haven't seen it myself. I've driven past it. Never been inside, but it sounds like, you know, it's good to have that sort of area for people to, you know, still tune their skills in the wintertime. Oh yeah, it's well set up with everything in there. Okay, so we're going to take one more break before we finish up this, you know, the Sask Sports Show for tonight. So as I've said all night, it's everybody's favorite time of the show, commercial time. So we're going to be right back, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how the importance of the game of Saskatchewan, or the game of softball, excuse me, in Saskatchewan has been for the association and the province itself. So stay tuned for more. And we're back here on the Sask Sports Show, brought to you by Amateur Sports TV. I'm with Gary McDonald. Before we end the show, I just have a few more questions for you, Gary. My first question is going to be, how important is softball to each, you know, smaller community in Saskatchewan, you know, or small or big, and, you know, the league's community involvement in each town or city that it represents? It's huge. It's huge, not only in rural Saskatchewan, but urban as well. I've had the opportunity to travel to many smaller towns and communities that are hosting tournaments for a provincial, and it gives them an opportunity to raise money for their program when they're hosting tournaments and provincials. They have gates, and I tell you, the food that they bring out from those smaller communities and stuff, and all the volunteers that they have, and it's you know, I've seen all the grandmas and grandpas out there in lawn chairs looking at their grandkids, and the whole community is right out there. It's very exciting to see, and I like to get out there as much as I can to whoever's hosting, if I can, and meet people and talk to people, and just be involved in the excitement with them at all these local events. Well, from what you said, they take a lot of pride in it. You know, being able to host these you know, these championships or provincials or tournaments of any kind. You know, oh no, go ahead. Yeah, I was going to say, like, we have anywhere between 130 and 180 communities involved in the sport every summer. So obviously I can't get to them all, but we have people that get there, and we hear from them, and it's a great time. Well, and you talked about food. You know, I find, you know, I used to play baseball, and baseball diamond food and hockey arena food, you know, they're just as good. So I have to ask you, big fan of the taco in the bag invention. With going to small hockey rinks and whatnot, it was a big hit back when I was playing hockey. Is that sort of thing, hit the ballparks in softball?
Oh, it does. And one of my favorites was homemade pie.
Oh,
They brought homemade pie to the park, and it was awesome. Like I tell you, they go all out.
and those small towns, they really know how to put on a smorgasbord of food. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
It's great to see that the whole community gets out and involved with hosting these
And they
these
do.
tournaments, and it's just great to see. But you've been around, you've been doing this a long time, you've been a part of the game for a long time. Is there, like, I don't want to put one moment, but do you have a list, like a few moments that you'll always remember about the game of softball?
I guess there's, I don't know if I can pinpoint just one. There are several. Since my involvement in the game, not only as a coach, but as an executive person, I've had the opportunity to travel coast to coast. I've been to every province and territory due to the game of softball, whether it's coach at a national or meetings and so on. And the people I have met that across the country are like family to me. We're all very close. We become very good friends. We stay in contact with each other, and hopefully always will. So that's very good. Of course, coaching my kids and seeing some of the things that they accomplished when they played, you never forget that. There was back in 2004, I was honored with getting the Darren Lipinski Memorial Award presented to me. It's an award that goes to through the SASA in Saskatoon for outstanding contribution to the game of softball in the city of Saskatoon, and I was pretty honored to be selected and on the same plaque as of a number of people, and I know majority of them and a number more will be added to this list, which they should. In my coaching days, I was able to win a gold medal with my team as a coach at a U19 and a junior ladies Western Canadian championships, and had a fairly good showing at a Canadian championship. Finished 5th. It's pretty tough in there, but that was a good go. So yeah, but it just basically the people that I work with, those and have met, it's just been outstanding for me. It's a passion of mine. They share the same thing, and I'm looking forward to a few more years yet.
Well, my last question for you, Gary, before we conclude this interview, is what do you love most about the game? Like you just said, you've met so many amazing people. I imagine that's probably something that you love about the game.
Yeah.
What are some other things that you love most about the game?
Well, the sport itself, it's fast, it's exciting. I mean, there's so much offense, so much defense involved. The opportunity and witness to see the growth of athletes that I've coached and watched them over the years on other teams, and how they've grown and develop into much better ball players through all the coaching they've had through various coaches. You can learn something from everybody, and getting the opportunity to go and play in colleges all over the States and Canada games. I guess that was a highlight for me too. At the last Canada games in Winnipeg, I was the manager of the team, and that was the first ever actual Canada games that I was at. But the ball there was incredible, and spent like 15 hours a day at the ballpark, and it was worth every minute of it. It was great competition. Saskatchewan did well. Yeah, there's just so many things, JD. I don't know, but that covers quite a few of them, I think.
Well, Gary, I really appreciate you taking the time and doing this interview with me. I know I've learned a lot about the about softball in Saskatchewan, about your association, about what you guys do for the province itself, other things that people can do, how to get into it. So, and I know that you've been able to promote your guys' brand as well, being on the show and just getting the word out about the game of softball in Saskatchewan. So again, I really thank you, Gary, for being on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, JD. I really enjoyed it, and I'm hoping for a great season coming up, and keeping our fingers crossed.
Well, I wish you the best of luck, and I really hope that this COVID can just leave, so we can get back to some sort of normalcy here and playing sports again, and not having to worry about wearing masks or standing too close to somebody or sanitizing 400 times a day.
Exactly.
But Gary McDonald, everyone, I really appreciate it. And again, thank you.
Thank you, JD.
So that concludes another episode of the Sask Sports Show, brought to you by Amateur Sports TV. Before we end things here, I'd like to thank the sponsor of the show, Southwest Terminal. And I just wanted to remind everybody that we'll be back with another episode on Thursday. So you guys can catch all of our episodes on our Facebook, YouTube, Periscope page of any archived shows that you guys want to catch. And so just make sure you catch the Sask Sports Show every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central Time. So that does it for us here on the Sask Sports Show. Hope everyone has a good night, and we'll see you next week.